Welcome, and thank you for joining us today on Phase 2 of the Digital Strategy for IBPOC Artists and Arts Organizations. I am Perry Bulgaris, Digital Associate with SAPAMO. We acknowledge that we live, work, meet, and travel on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples that have cared for this land now called Canada. SAPAMO is located on the land on which the City of Toronto is situated, which we acknowledge is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. SAPAMO is committed to creating meaningful relationships and supporting a diversity of practices, art forms, and cultural expressions. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. At this point, I would like to introduce Amy Mashinsky, Canadian Opera Company. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you very much for that lovely land acknowledgement. We're joined here today by some special guests from Tessitura, who will give you an overview of the solutions that many arts organizations are using. And as well, we'll have some facilitated discussion with Alex Hocevar, who is our project manager on all things digital, Chris Sonneman for the National Ballet of Canada, and my colleague Steve Sherwood from the Canadian Opera Company. So with that, I will pass it over to Alex to introduce officially our guests from Tessitura. Over to you, Alex.
Sure, thanks, Amy. So over the last few weeks, we've talked a lot about the technology that is available to arts organizations. And one of the main pieces of technology that's really emerged in the last 10 to 20 years is the capability around customer relationship management, or CRM. And so while there are a lot of organizations out there and software solutions that can be used to enable this capability, Tessitura is one of the few that really focuses on the arts and culture sphere. And so we're really excited today to have a couple of folks from Tessitura, Andrew and Rebecca, to walk us through what their software capability offers. So Andrew and Rebecca, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex. And thanks to everyone from SAPAMO for giving us the opportunity to speak today. And thank you to Chris and to Amy and to Steve for inviting us. So we are Tessitura Network is the name of our company. And our goal is very simple: advancing the business of arts and culture. As Alex said, we are purpose-built for arts and cultural organizations. I'm going to give you just a short look at who we are as a company, and then I will hand over to my colleague Rebecca to give you a little bit more about the technology. All right. So as Alex mentioned, what we learned relatively early in our history is that arts and cultural organizations were struggling to be able to contain and manage and work with all of their information, their customer and transactional information, in a single place, in a unified place. I have heard people say that data is like, data is the new gold, as they say, or the new oil. And the idea is that so many cultural organizations actually have this incredible asset in their customers, in their donors, in their ticket buyers, in their registrants of education programs, but don't have the ability to actually unlock that data. And really that is what we look to do as a technology provider. And as you can see here on the screen, we have one technology where all of these areas can be interfaced at one time. We have an interesting story, and the first thing that people find interesting about us is that we're actually a nonprofit company. We are not a for-profit. We don't have investors. We aren't looking to make dividends or satisfy shareholders. We really began as a nonprofit, and we are a nonprofit today. What happened is 20 years ago, there wasn't a single technology that existed to do what I just talked about, to have a single place for all of this information to live and for organizations to be able to transact and to be able to develop relationships with their customers. So 7 US-based organizations came together and created a nonprofit with a brand new technology called Tessitura. These organizations sat around a conference table, the leadership of these organizations, and had a handshake deal to develop not only this software, but to develop this company and this nonprofit. They wanted it to be member owned, so it's actually a co-op. The board that I report to as president and CEO are leaders of 14 different organizations around the world. They didn't want to be beholden to the market, as it were. They wanted to be beholden to the needs of the organizations. Our nonprofit company really is encapsulated in 3 different areas. The technology that you'll see more in a minute, and certainly the core of what we do is the technology. So that if you buy a ticket at the Canadian Opera Company, or if you make a donation to the National Ballet of Canada, that is flowing through our system under the hood. We provide extensive services. We actually have 60 consultants worldwide of our 220 employees who help organizations make the most of the technology and the methodologies that we have. And then community, which I'm sure our friends at the opera and the ballet will talk more about community when they speak a little bit later. It is the key to the success of our company. Because we are member owned, we have a whole team that does nothing but help foster community amongst our organizations. And when I was reading up on CPAMO before today's demo, it made me realize actually how much we have in common. We are an organization that is trying to advance the business of arts and culture. We are focused on technology primarily, but we are wanting to bring together, what you call gatherings. We have gatherings during non-COVID times. We have hundreds of gatherings all over the world of arts and culture professionals that sometimes are talking about Tessitura, but sometimes are talking about just the needs or the concerns or the challenges in the industry. And we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to foster that community throughout our company's history. It is written into our mission. Our mission is to help arts and cultural organizations achieve their goals through technology, through services, and through knowledge sharing and community collaboration. So with this very simple and slightly unusual mission, we've grown every year we've been in business. We grew during the Great Recession. We grew during this last year's pandemic. And we've even added 7 more organizations just this year on top of that. We're very proud of that, and we are very focused on making sure that our organizations are successful. We started in the United States, as I said. Our second country was Canada, and we are now at 730, I think is the number. I actually signed a contract today. It might be 731. And we have staff that support each of those regions. We are completely focused on arts and culture. Others in our space tend to also focus in other areas, which is fine. That's just not what we do. So we don't focus on sport. We don't focus on amusement parks or anything else like that. We really are laser focused on arts and culture. And we found that part of our business has made the connections richer. Again, as I saw with CPAMO, you're not focused on one genre. You're focused on different genres of arts and culture. And I'm sure that you're finding a similar, that you found a similar kind of richness to your dialogue that we have in our work. So just a few slides of the kinds of organizations that we serve: Carnegie Hall, Kennedy Center, Royal Opera House, National Ballet of Canada, of course, National Theatre, Roundabout Theatre, and then also very, very strong in museums, Museum of Science, Aga Khan Museum there in Ontario. And in fact, we decided we would pull a list of all of our Ontario organizations just in case you're interested. And I think it's really wonderful because just to look at your province, it is just a microcosm. There's museums, there's opera, there's dance, there's theater, there's Baroque music, Harbourfront Center. Like, it's just a wonderful collection of arts and culture. We have a number of programs, as I mentioned, around the community. In the last year, it has all gone virtual like everybody else in the world. Since the pandemic started in March of last year, we hosted on average 1 online virtual free event every single day, every single business day. And that could be anything from, in the early days, frankly, it was just almost like group therapy, like let's just get together and talk about what's happening. now it's been very directed. If we have new products coming out or if we have new features coming out, we'll have meetups about that. And it's been just a wonderful way for organizations and for individuals to stay in touch during such a difficult time. I mentioned that we have comprehensive services on top of our technology. I won't really go so much into that, but anything from training on our technology to helping with business process improvement and that sort of thing. I started with this, and I'll just continue to say that Tessitura is allowing organizations to create a data-driven culture, to be proactive rather than reactive about understanding your audience to make better decisions. And we've seen again and again that our organizations do end up being more efficient and effective in what they do. I have just a couple of slides about how we have responded to the global pandemic. We basically stopped our normal product development process last March and devoted all of our time and effort and resources to supporting our members in this difficult time. This is a small list of some of the features that we brought out. And I think Steve and Chris would back me up on this in record time. I think our very first COVID-related feature came out 6 days after the shutdown started. Ultimately, we brought out 40 different features in the course of about 6 months, which is certainly a world record for us. And we've been very proud of the fact that we were able to really swarm on the problem and come up with really quick solutions like this one. This is from an outdoor venue in the Hudson Valley, where they do an annual holiday pumpkin tour that they were able to continue to do because it's all outdoors. And what you can see there on the screen is probably something familiar to you, but that is what we call contactless scanning. So in the past, if we were to scan somebody into a museum or into a theater, an usher would be standing there and they would be within 6 feet. But with our contactless scanning that we brought out quite quickly, you're able to still be quite safe and not be too close to somebody and still get in. And we've had wonderful comments from our users. And then just finishing up with this, and just one more comment before I hand off to Rebecca. We train our staff so that when they're interacting with a patron, they know exactly who they're talking to and how to personalize that experience for them. I've talked a little bit about the importance of data to help you understand your customers, but the other side of that coin is when you are face-to-face or on the phone or online with a patron, with a customer, with a donor, being able to know enough about them to provide them a really good customer experience has been the key to what we do from day one. And I think this encapsulates that. This is Kay from the Segerstrom Center in Orange County, California. And the last thing before I hand off to Rebecca is we have focused in this, just in this short deck, and certainly with Amy and Chris and Steve, there are a lot of very large brand name arts and cultural organizations that use Tessitura. We are very proud of the fact that a huge percentage of our organizations are $9 million and below, and a significant number of our organizations are $2 million and below. And it has become more and more of a focus of ours over the last few years, and even more so in the coming years, to widen our remit, to make sure that the benefits that we can provide as a fellow nonprofit to the arts and culture industry can be enjoyed by organizations of all sizes. And so while the fact that we began with the Metropolitan Opera and the Kennedy Center and the Stratford Festival has been a great source of strength for us as a company, the soul of our company is to look to broaden our reach so that we are just as effective for the smaller organizations that are doing amazing work in their communities as we've been for the brand name national institutions. So with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Rebecca, who's going to show you a little bit more under the hood, as it were, with Tessitura.
Wonderful. All right. So as Andrew said, I'm going to probably spend, again, the next 30 minutes giving a pretty high-level overview of Tessitura and our different functionality and benefits that can be offered. And then we're going to leave a little bit of space in case there's questions. And again, if there are questions, those can also be used in the chat for that. So as Andrew mentioned, we are a unified CRM system, and there is really no way better to highlight the fact that we have all of this unified functionality in one place than to see a data visualization of all of the functionality in one spot. So to see the ability to have that single and group sale data next to your subscription data, next to contribution and membership data. Now, this is our analytics tool that is built into Tessitura. And what this does, again, this pulls together all of the relevant data from those customer records, from all of the transactions across the organization, and can create visualizations that allow you to share that information with, whether it's a high-level board member, or whether it's an executive, or whether it's just giving everybody an update, again, on how things went yesterday. Tessitura Analytics is embedded directly in the Tessitura platform, and we deliver it to you with pre-built dashboards that really meet best practices in arts and culture. When these were being built, we spent time interviewing organizations to know, you know what, we want to be able to look high level, we want to be able to see daily revenue, we want to be able to look at our attendance data year over year, and then, we want to be able to see what sort of marketing efforts or sales channels. And if I want to know what came in for your phone sales, I want to be able to interact and have that entire dashboard react to what came in over the phone, to be able to play with your data. And again, Tessitura includes some reports, which I'm going to show a few samples of, but this is really that data playground, again, to allow you to create and extend and make your data relevant. You can also then really narrow down to things like knowing what major donors have given this year, or what major VIPs may be coming through the door tomorrow for an event, or even what VIPs are coming through to a certain performance or an event that we're having on this actual day, to looking at your groups and even being able to track group sales for how much money is due, or, again, what those visitors may need. And because, again, it's not just ticketing, it is fundraising, it is task-oriented follow-up with those constituents. Tessitura includes tools to be able to track that moves management to help increase your contributed revenue, and to be able to know what donors or what people need to be communicated with at what time. So again, this is just one sample to show everything that is possible to view, but all of this data is really coming from a CRM or constituent record in Tessitura. Now, I've pulled up a really great account here in our sample database, those model donors and subscribers and major donors and visitors that you may have. The Davidson household here is, if I just take a quick look, Tessitura operates in a household model, which really means that you can track all of the different individual relationships within that household, but you can also track who the people are within that record. So for instance, Josiah here is a teacher at this charter school, and Susie herself is actually an employee at the medical center. These relationships are able to be reciprocal and able to be used to help leverage fundraising, to help leverage people that subscribe together or visit together. Again, to help really get that profile of who somebody is. So as Kay said in her quote, you can communicate with them in the right way. Also, then you can know exactly who they are in their relationship to your organization. So their household, again, is a VIP. They have a planned gift. They're also subscribers. And then it looks like here, Susie is actually a board member. So the household isn't, right? Susie is. So having this household model allows you to communicate with people in the way that they have requested, and also allows you to know exactly who you're talking to. You can also take things down to a different level and track things like, if that person were to walk into your venue, who do you want to receive a communication? With our access control, as Andrew briefly talked about, and I'll mention again in a minute, we're able to not only scan tickets, but provide customer service, tracking birth dates for stewardship reasons. Again, all of those different points of data. And one of my personal favorite areas in Tessitura is actually our interest tab. Now, many people that come to your different venues may say, well, I'm interested in hearing you about Broadway shows. But in reality, they're buying children and family programming. Now, this really allows you to take that marketing efforts and to both market to them for what they're purchasing and what they've requested to hear from you about. So when you are able to attribute their revenue back to the efforts that you've made, you can know what they're actually have responded to. Now, on this constituent record, I am one click away from seeing a broad range of data. So whether I'm one click away from seeing contribution history, or being able to see that ticketing history, to even if they purchased tickets and did they attend, those can be two different stories. I'm also able to see things like what sort of communications have we sent out to them? What requests have they had through customer service tracking? And really important, as we're talking about all these different points of communication, what are their contact details? Now, with Tessitura, we actually take contact permissions and privacy very seriously. We are fully GDPR compliant, including functionality around the right to be forgotten, data protection for minors, and this also includes functionality to keep those permissions fresh. Those can be for organizational specific or for individuals themselves, departments. So please send me invitations, but don't send me solicitations. So again, you can really narrow down and keep these fresh by having them as part of that purchase path to say, would you still like to be on this list, or would you like to be removed? We can also track many different points of communication, from those postal addresses to emails and phone numbers, with the ability to track specific months that people are at certain addresses. And also, once you know that you can contact them, what purpose would be best for that? Do I want my bills to go to one place versus my general membership information or donation receipts? And just a few other points here. With our history tab, this is where really all our membership and fundraising information lives, which I'm going to touch on in just a few minutes. But the ability to really track all of those different donors and giving levels and recognition that people should receive, along with then being able to make sure that you're addressing people correctly, whether it is a program listing, whether it is a salutation and how you send a specific letter to them, or whether it's just being able to make sure that you have alternate spellings or nicknames or things in the system, again, to find the right people that you want to talk to at that moment. Now up here, you can notice that we've got some really great information that's quick and at a glance. This is in our constituent header, and things like I have that board member or that VIP or here a subscriber. So those are really coming, again, all of these points of data are flexible up in that header and coming from the data that is stored within that record. Now, when you have a unified CRM, it is important to be able to also report out on this data. And our first tool to really do that, other than our analytics that I just showed, is actually something like I want to be able to pull a query and know what donors came to a concert. Something, pretty simple. So I'm going to look here, actually created a little list as a sample. But what are our concert donors? So I'm going to go ahead and open up this list. And really, again, we're able to query all of those different points across that constituent record here. So it looks like I want everyone in my concert series who is a member. So everything that you could find in that CRM is available here for you to filter, for you to output, for you to report on. So I'm going to go ahead and generate this. And it looks like I have a list of 8 people. Now, what is really nice is I can see those 8 people. I can also verify that their data is correct and why they met those criteria, which, anyone that works within a database likes to be able to validate that what they've asked for is actually coming out. So here you can see that they gave, $2,500 to our annual campaign and also came to a number of the concert series. And then if I decide I want to, have a certain level of output, maybe I'm going to send them a letter or an email. You can then say, I found my who. Now let's look at actually what information I want. In this case, maybe I want some address information and their those high level tags. So I'm able to view that same list of people, but this time be able to see all of that relevant address information, all of who they are, again, that subscriber, that donor, that VIP, and any points of communication that we have for them. So lots of functionality here across the CRM. And again, we've just really touched on this, but I want to show a few transactions now just to show you again what's possible with Tessitura's transactional processing, both in the application and online. So I'm actually going to open my ticketing sales screen here. And we've got a few different views that you can use to look at the products and the availability of things that you have for sale. This is our quick sale view, which really means it's a graphical interface, a touchscreen capable, but all of this order data is tied to all of the different products within your database, with the ability to view, specific seats if you want to view a seat map, with the ability to sell single tickets quickly for that night of show, the ability to have these special messaging and questions and upsell opportunities, both here within the application and online. So are you a subscriber? Subscribers get discounts on single tickets. Then being able to utilize and search right on that record. So yeah, the Davidsons are subscribers. We looked at that. We're able to find them quickly, and we were able to thank them for their 10 years of consistent loyalty to the Autumn Ridge Center. They are a subscriber. They're going to now receive that special discount that they were entitled to. But you cannot just, with Tessitura, it's not just selling a ticket in one order or taking a contribution in one order or only being able to do one thing at a time. Because we are that unified CRM, we also offer that unified transaction path. So I could do things like add-on contributions. I could ask them if they want to round up to the closest $5 or $10 or even $1. I don't think there's many places I go now where I don't get asked for that small roundup or addition. And we also can sell packages. So not just single tickets, but the ability to package items together, whether that is a fixed package of a specific set of products. So I can add in that fixed package, or we can then pick our seats that we want on that seat map. Or we can also then add flexible packages. So you can see here, I've added that fixed package with that seat map, that seat on that map. Or we can do a choose your own experience where you can put different varying products together, even across different venues, all in one flexible package where I can choose specific dates, specific items, and then also be able to choose those specific seats for them. So again, a lot is possible here when you are adding these different products and these different items. And as part of this as well, Tessitura offers that flexible payment options that right within the application, you can validate the credit cards, you can go ahead and close out their transactions and offer that again, one unified purchase. So in this case, this would be all PCI compliant, P2PE, secure payment processing, but with the ability for tokens and things like that. And I'm going to just pull up a sample card that I have up here with that token to apply this payment. So this is just authorizing, again, all in real time, being able to finish that transaction and provide them, again, the tickets that they would need, the receipting that they would have. Now, what ticket and receipt options are available we have a few different options. We do have the ability for you to produce BOCA tickets, for you to also produce mobile tickets. And these mobile tickets are a standard feature of Tessitura. They can be designed to have that look and that feel that match your brand. And also then to provide flexible print at home experience tickets. These can be a great opportunity, right, for marketing officers, things like that. And all of that receipting that you may need. Now, for our mobile tickets, for mobile operations, that quick sale can also be taken on the go with you in a way where I can do line busting. I can take this out to another venue. I can have this for roving donations at an event. So Tessitura is able to be accessed on that Android platform here with, still offering the same different products that you would want someone to have. And I mentioned access control previously. Tessitura's access control is beyond just scanning and validating tickets, but also producing customer service notifications so that when Anakin walks in here, you can receive that special message. Maybe it's a thank you. Maybe it's materials available or waiting for them at the box office. Again, you can provide that personalized experience. And we go beyond just standard "you can't get in" to providing really clear entry messaging, as well as house monitoring from those devices that can be used by your house management for things like reseating or seeing how close they are to full prior to curtain. I mentioned earlier you can also receive special notifications. This was one of my favorite features as a former fundraiser, that I used to get an email or a text message when one of my VIPs would walk in, so I could bump into them at their seat, say hello, or do a visit, again, when they are in the house. And just tying back to what Andrew said before, us being able to now offer this contactless scanning as organizations begin to think about reopening, begin to create those plans to keep your staff and your patrons safe. Now, all of the ticketing transactions you saw in the application can also be performed online. And Tessitura really offers one of the most flexible web approaches in the industry with this white label transaction path that allows you to process transactions, whether from a calendar or a list view, offering those same fixed and flexible packages, offering gift certificates, contributions and memberships online. And one of our newest features, the ability to sell and monetize gated and digital content. We've seen a lot of organizations really being creative, right, in the ways that they're going to reach out and the ways that they can expand to new audiences. And with this, again, you can put a paywall behind any of that content, and individuals can access that directly from their accounts. Speaking of accounts, we can do that full account management, which includes address information, those interests that I talked about, like what do you want to hear from us about? And even self-service mobile tickets and returns. This, again, was another feature that we pulled out this summer. And really, this self-service ability, you can decide if you have to have a cancellation or if you want to offer people flexibility, what options you want to give them for those tickets. We've seen from our community amazing returns with being able to retain over 80% of their revenue because of these tools, because we gave people options to not just return their tickets, but to turn that into a contribution or to hold that revenue for future use. And we can also, just like in the application, offer things like that upselling and membership messaging. Would you like to become a subscriber? You can buy more, save more, right? Consider a donation. All of that can be, directly integrated into that purchase path. So I've just got a few quick samples of some of your peer organizations to show you just how this looks online. The first here is for Massey and Royal Thompson Hall, and this is the TN Express Web purchase page where they have decided to display their information in a list view. Now, you can easily link into these transaction and purchase pages, but for this case, I'm going to purchase a ticket here to something that they have for sale. And this is just a great example of how you can then offer patrons the select your own seat option. You can have that map, that seat map. You can have the prices that are available. We have the ability for things like adding in your handicapped and accessible seating. You can have special pricing and access for, if I'm a subscriber or a donor, I could access, holds or special points or do pre-sales. Again, all of that is available. I'm going to go ahead and add this into the cart. And when I add this into the cart, I'm then able to see my cart and continue to check out. Now I am going to remove this because I don't want to take any inventory from a live site here. But just again, you can then continue shopping, go back to that page, add a donation at any time. Also, colleagues there at the Toronto Symphony have actually taken advantage of our digital content, and they are selling right now digital concerts. So I can access this digital concert, and what they've then provided me is it's going to tell you to log into your account to be able to see and gain access to that content that you would want. And as, again, organizations right now are, not everyone is performing, taking donations is also very, very important. Now, I am just on the regular Royal and McPherson website. This is really to show you how our online purchase path really connects with Tessitura and your main website. So you can see I'm on their regular website. I go to donate now, and I'm immediately taken to their purchase path that is provided by Tessitura. Now with this, the look and feel has not changed. It doesn't feel like I'm being passed off to another website somewhere. But here I am actually, the URL just changed, and all this means is now I am on that purchase path. This is pulling information directly from Tessitura, and I'm able in one page with this feature to take that donation, to take their contact information and match it based on that, pass everything back to Tessitura, removing all of that friction from, again, getting as much revenue into the door as you can. So we could share many, many websites, and there's a lot of great examples on our website. But again, just since at the high level today, I'm going to sort of move forward here to talk then a little bit about the contributions. But again, you know, really flexible, lots of options. And while you've seen 3 different sites, none of them look the same. None of them say Tessitura anywhere, and all of them provide you the ability to, any online fees that you want to charge are yours. We don't charge transaction fees for online. So really, again, as getting as much revenue into your pocket as you can from those online purchases. So if I come back to Tessitura, when we are thinking about contributions and memberships, I'm actually going to go back into the Davidsons since they are such great accounts, great patrons for us. You want to think about not just that recognition that we talked about earlier, so being able to know who somebody is or that donor or giving level, but we also want to be able to think about when we are planning the moves and how we're going to communicate with them. Tessitura has some of the best fundraising tools in the industry, really developed by our network, you know, with input. Some of the, again, all of the fundraisers that are part of these great organizations that Andrew was talking about helped guide the tools that we're providing for fundraisers. Now, I really like to think about these tools, this is called plans, as a goal-oriented venture, right? I have a goal of getting revenue in from the Davidsons, and I want a tool that will help me track everything that I need to do to get to that goal. Now, in this case, we are in the status of they did give their gift already, but we can see their ask and their goal and when we hope to have this completed by, as well as what is that probability of bringing this in. Now, personally, as a former fundraiser, I always wanted to know how much, where's my goal, right? How much do I still have to raise? And being able to use that probability against your goal, you've got a built-in budgeting tool that really helps you know, again, how close and how far you are, along with a lot of our analytics tools. You can tie these plans to individuals and the different roles that they may have. And we can also then really look at that high-level strategy and then those definite individual communications. Now they had an incoming call to call for updates on the reopening. We can add notes, we could add contact details, we could add other items here, again, to know exactly what is happening with these individuals. And all of this data is tied back directly to specific workers. And in this case, I'm a worker here and I have a nice little briefcase. That means I'm part of, you know, again, I have a role in being able to track all of this information. And you can see here is my personal portfolio. Now, if I like to think about this as close to an Excel spreadsheet embedded with Tessitura as possible. You've got the ability to filter, to decide on what columns you want to see, to add in different points of data, to drag and drop here, and then to even say, you know what, I'm going to filter this out now. I just really want to look at our capital efforts and see how we're doing with that. From these different plans, again, I can open them up. I can see that same exact information really easily in my mobile device. Really easy in the application and also in my mobile device. I think back fondly on the Tessitura conference where Andrew first did a voice to text message into a cell phone to add a comment into a plan in Tessitura. And really, again, the idea is fundraisers aren't behind their desks all the time. So being able to pick all of this information up and take it on the road with you to add in these notes and to track what is happening, again, is such a useful tool. Also, just in that fundraising and donation world, just to mention a few things, we also have functionality to build in for your events and activities, being able to really look at you know, who should be invited to something, what their RSVP status is. And again, when it is safe to gather again, even being able to put people together for events, table seating, link different records together to make sure that you can, again, know who's coming to your different events and be able to invite people for the future. Tied in with fundraising features, obviously the ability to take those contributions, those roundup, those add-on donations. We're looking at, matching gifts, honor and memorial contributions, recurring donations. All of that is standard within Tessitura, as well as then really being able to store documents about who people are, about information just generally about them. Where do they give? Do they have certain assets or school information? Have we done research on them? And then being able to even build loyalty programs or rankings that can create special access or recognition or discounts. Now, with all of these specific transactions and again, data points, you want to make sure, as I talked about before, when you are communicating and reaching out to people, being able to attribute that revenue back. Now, Tessitura does include a lot of revenue attribution tools. And with these marketing and digital tools, again, we can power that segmentation. We can power automation and tracking and patron behavior to attribute, this activity to engagement, no matter what that communication or marketing channel is. Now, again, we know that all of you market to patrons in many different ways. And using Tessitura's tools, again, allows you to track that impact and responses you've made to empower your decisions, as I'm sure you're going to hear about in a few minutes from our in the second part of the presentation. There are several ways you can carry forward this engagement. This is actually an email I received from the Globe Theatre when they reopened their guided tours. Now, I clicked on that email, and that promo and that really tracked from the second I clicked through that email through purchasing that transaction, with the guests not having to do anything. You can also trigger customers to enter promotional codes, again, to track that revenue and attribute that. Now, that could be to receive a special discount or to tie it back to that specific marketing effort. And finally, online, you can also then ask in a survey. You can ask surveys in the application, you can ask surveys online, but how did you hear about us? And you can link to those specific efforts to, again, be able to attribute that revenue back to know, am I doing the right thing? What else should I be doing? What kind of decisions can I make? So we've got standard reporting in our analytics dashboards, as well as just overview in Tessitura about, what is my response rate? How much revenue am I bringing in? And Tessitura's digital tools really also extend to email marketing, to social media, and even the ability to embed Google Analytics in your transaction paths. Tessitura works with 2 integrated email marketing partners to allow you to effectively communicate with your patrons for automations, donor and member renewals, invitations, sales opportunities, and general communication or newsletters. Those partners are Wordfly for email deployment and Prospect2, which offers email deployment and advanced marketing automation. But really, what this means is you can send those pre-show and those post-show thank yous automatically. We see 60 to 80% open rates for pre and post-show emails. And that's just because people want to know, right, about those products. These can be personalized. These are actually shows that I attended here. Hello, Rebecca. You have an upcoming show at this date at this time. And really, our partners' tools allow you to create those automations. So have that dynamic data so that you don't need to be sending and manually sending out an email before every show. It really is that set it and forget it. But really, the core piece here is it is targeted, it is personal, and it is meaningful. You can retarget, leave things in the cart, right? Integrate your surveys or thank yous, and really also see some great email reporting that will allow you to know where people are reacting in that specific email. What kind of email clients are people using? Are people looking at it on their phone or their email? Or as you even send emails, who's opening it? And from our email to also social media, Tessitura includes tools to allow you to use Facebook Connect and Facebook Share to embed that within that purchase path, right? Just extending that digital impact that you have. You can share certain events or particular things that are happening, or even use Tessitura's list manager tools to export into your social media tools like Facebook or Twitter to create those custom and like audiences. And again, at the end of the day, bring more revenue into your organization. And lastly, again, with that shift to online and digital performances, Tessitura's tools not only enable you to sell those tickets to streaming and gated content online, but also really to track who is purchasing and how far your audience is reaching. Tessitura's analytics tools not only provide those basic analytics that we looked at before for, revenue numbers or who is coming to things, but also allow you to expand your reach and see exactly who is purchasing tickets to specific performances or to specific items, or what impact have you had not only in your specific area, but all over the world. And really, again, the analytics tools here are built to help you explore that data and to help you really see that impact that you're having. So I wanted to take a pause here. I've been talking a whole lot and see, again, if there are specific questions, other functionality or features. Again, this was a really high level 30-minute overview, but we're happy to answer some questions before you guys move to the next portion.
That's great, Rebecca. So I've posted into the comments there. If anybody has any questions, feel free to either unmute yourself or post it in the chat. Do have one question for, might be Andrew, might be Rebecca, not entirely sure who, but how might, for a lot of the folks that are on the line today, they may be from smaller organizations. And so how might a smaller organization begin to access these kinds of capabilities? And are there any examples of your organization having worked with a smaller one for a successful implementation?
Yeah, I'll start. Just give Rebecca a chance to take a breath. So first of all, it depends on the definition of smaller organization. We typically, and the dollars I use are US dollars. We typically offer Tessitura. We find organizations are successful with Tessitura if they're at roughly $2 million and above. It's just sort of straight out. So, and we have plenty of organizations of that size, like here in Portland, Oregon, Artist Repertory Theater, Broadway Rose Theater, organizations like that. Rebecca showed you sort of it felt like, Rebecca, you were able to show every single feature in 30 minutes. But organizations of that size maybe don't need like this tracking 15 different mailing addresses for 15 different kinds of homes, those sorts of things. When we do an implementation, it's effectively, we kind of turn on the functionality or train on the functionality that matches the organizational need. So that is part of our implementation process. We start with discovery. We often can get, an hour in and kind of recognize that either we need to really drill into this area or we really need to pull back on another area. We also have the ability to have what's called a consortium. So that is a single database that has multiple organizations sharing that database. It's often a Performing Arts Center will have artistic partners. So Arts Commons in Calgary, for instance, is an example of that. And in that way, because there is a shared service using Tessitura, the much smaller organizations then can benefit from that. So One Yellow Rabbit Theater Company is a 5-person company in Calgary that is a very successful user of Tessitura as part of the Arts Commons consortium. Rebecca, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, we covers it.
Great. We do have a couple questions in the chat. And the first is around, can an organization see who did any kind of work in the system, like a ticket order or pretty much anything else? I think that begins to refer to things like audit logging.
Yes, Tessitura offers a full audit trail that allows you to see date, time, location, who did it. And we actually have some great audit reporting around that as well. So you can even see if individuals change their accounts online or, what the previous value was. And all of that is kept right in that constituent record.
Great. And the other one, is there a feature to track volunteer hours, or I guess just volunteers in general, their hours and any other work that they've done?
Sure, yeah. So with volunteers, I actually will show you something here on this one. We actually have some functionality I didn't touch on, if that's possible, right? With something we call room and resource scheduling. And resource scheduling allows you to set up individuals as specific resources. So here, actually, if I come to my account, I'm set up as a volunteer or a docent or an event host. And tied to those resources, we can also put things like qualifications around those, and then view the schedule and the assignments that an individual is attached to. So those volunteer hours in Tessitura right now, this functionality covers, around bookings and things like that. But we do absolutely have ways to be able to track those volunteers and the specific assignments that they are made.
Great. And the last question we've got here is, there's been some discussion, particularly in the Toronto market, around the potential of shared platforms. So, for example, an online portal for arts and culture ticketing. Have you guys had any experience with that? And maybe just comment a little bit about how your system might accommodate something like that.
Rock, paper, scissors, Rebecca?
Yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
So we do, so actually using the same functionality that I mentioned with the consortium model, we have organizations that do this today. So for instance, I'm thinking about, Rebecca, you'll have to tell me the name, but Northwest Arkansas.
Ticketing Arkansas, yeah. Kappa is another one.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio has this, where multiple organizations are sharing a system, and so there will often be. So I'll use the Northwest Arkansas one. So the Walton Arts Center, it's an arts center in Fayetteville, Arkansas, I think. Yep. And they're just a arts center, and they sell their tickets, and they have a wonderful website and all of that. There is a separate website called Northwest Arkansas Tickets, which also sells those tickets, but then also sells tickets to a number of other organizations in that region, so that it can be more of an aggregation. It sounds like the sort of thing that you're talking about. Just I want to do something tonight in Toronto, and I want to go to one place, and so we have that, as Rebecca said, in Columbus, Ohio as well. And we do have some organizations where there are, that the ticket provider is the one that's using Tessitura, but the organization may not, if that makes sense. So so the calendar and the actual purchase path may be going through Tessitura, even if the theater, let's say, behind the scenes is not using Tessitura. So that's something that we're able to do as well.
Yeah, and I would just say, what powers Tessitura's online transaction platforms is also an API, and that is a very powerful API. So, again, we can provide the ability for you to access all of the data in Tessitura and have that being displayed in one unified place with utilizing that REST-based service as well. So it just would be remiss if I don't think I spoke the words API yet. So
check it off.
You can't get through a presentation like this without talking about APIs.
There you go. I do see there's one more question here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you would be sending out those mass emails, oh, sorry, did you want to read it? I'm sorry.
No, go for it. Go ahead.
Sure. So the question is about sending out mass emails, whether individuals will keep the system, keep a copy of the said email. So that email marketing platform itself will keep a copy of the said email, but what is in Tessitura is actually two ways that you can access that. The first one is through this connections. You can see that the email was sent. And then both of those partners provide a custom screen that exists right on the constituent record, where you can see the actual emails that were sent and be able to click through to that, because all that custom screen is a web-based screen that's accessing, again, their application.
Great. And there's one more that snuck in. Well, you can read it there.
Yeah.
Donations from outside of Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have standard tools in Tessitura for actually import of constituents, for import of ticketing, and for import of contributions for anything that may happen outside of your core system. Whether it's that list purchase or whether it is donations coming from a central location, you can easily import those into Tessitura, and they will be reflected in the same way any other contribution would.
Great. Well, this has been a fantastic presentation. Appreciate both Andrew and Rebecca, both your times, and the great insights that you've given into how your system can be used for organizations both large and small. So really appreciate the time you took today, and thank you very much.
Just sort of have a bit of a collaborative conversation. I have a feeling that the way Canadian Opera Company and National Ballet use Tessitura is somewhat similar. For Canadian Opera Company, I mean, I can speak to the experience of coming from another system into Tessitura to begin with. In 2014, Canadian Opera Company was using 3 different systems that tracked basically the same kinds of information, but for slightly different purposes. And, we had a very difficult time trying to get a unified viewpoint of our patrons, at any given time. If someone was looking at one system, in other words, the information could have been up to date there, but not in one of the other 2 places. So as hard as people worked to keep things in sync, it was still possible to find situations where that wasn't the case. And I know for many organizations, that is probably true for you too. You may maintain, different systems, even if those systems just are documents that contain different kinds of patron information. So you may have an Excel document that tracks, people that have made donations versus another document that tracks folks that have, come to either see a performance or an event that you've held. We had, defined systems that were tracking that, but largely had the same problem trying to bring it all together. So after doing, quite a lot of work mapping out how our existing data would flow into Tessitura, we worked with their consulting services and ultimately brought everything into the system that Rebecca and Andrew were showing us. And today are able to see in a very comprehensive way everything transactionally that someone's done with our organization, and as well speak to those different efforts Rebecca was talking about from a fundraising or philanthropy perspective. Tracking where someone is, within their life cycle, so to speak, of being within our system. Chris, did you want to speak to any of that?
Yeah. For the ballet, I mean, it was different for me because I came in 2014 to the ballet. And at that point, they had already been using Tessitura for about 9 years. And now the difference between, for those that don't know, is that the opera uses the Tessitura's ramp implementation, whereas the ballet self-hosts. So we have our own hosted version of Tessitura that we run out of Amazon. So Tessitura offers for smaller organizations that don't have a large IT group, or for a lot of the newer companies that come on, they offer ramp, and they do all the hosting and manage the system. So you're essentially purchasing access to their platform, and they host the platform for you. When the ballet came on board early on, that wasn't an option. You had to put it together and host it yourself. And that led to a lot of work for the organization to manage and maintain. And the ballet is very much, a lot of its business is actually built around Tessitura. It is the lifeblood of how our organization works. And it's integrated into every single department within our organization. The area I think that we lacked the most was really making decisions based on the data presented and the analytics provided. And up until recently, when the information that you saw presented wasn't available, the analytics tools are new, and they're supplied through a company called SciSense. Prior to that, there was T-Stats, And what we found was there's a lot of data that was very much external to our organization. And so we still had a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of people sort of pulling information together and slicing and dicing it and whether or not it was accurate or not. So the changes that we're making within our organization now is to really sort of dive into that dashboard, dive into those analytics. There's been discussions about restructuring the organization to a certain degree to better work with the data that's being presented and what exactly is our patron journey from someone who's new to the organization up to someone who's been with the organization for a while and donors, and sort of working with that information to sort of really understand the people that we have within our system. But it is very much the heart of everything that we do, and provides that all of that functionality that you see is functionality that we use. And it's really the focus now for us is to say, if Tessitura provides it, are we using it, and how are we using it? And if we're not using it, why? And really try to integrate so that we're also not creating things. Our previous era website was built with a tool that was separate from Tessitura, and we used the API to pull it in. But now that Tessitura offers TNU and their e-commerce platform that integrates directly into Tessitura, we actually got rid of all of the e-commerce functionality in our website, and we just link to Tessitura's system because it provides everything in one-stop shop and makes it much easier for our organizations to manage.
Yeah, and I think, just to echo some of what Chris was saying, I think the experience at Canadian Opera Company is similar. To touch on the two sort of different operating models of being self-hosted versus using Tessitura's infrastructure, I mean, it really is software as a service or platform as a service. They're providing all of the infrastructure that you require if you go with the Tessitura hosted solution. That's not at $0. Obviously, there's a cost associated with that. But if you don't have an IT staff within your organization, I would suggest, trying to bring the necessary infrastructure into your own environment might be cost prohibitive. Even if you were looking to leverage a cloud-based solution that you were trying to manage yourself, unless you happen to be very technically savvy, you might look to leverage Tessitura services directly. They are very hands-on. They are constantly monitoring and protecting the environment and are in touch whenever there are issues. We've also been leveraging their what I refer to as their sales funnel, which is the TNU product Chris mentioned since the beginning. They are constantly iterating and improving that product. We actually make heavy use of our main coc.ca website, and you have the choice as to whether or not you use the TNU solution completely as the end-to-end experience for your patron, or you can choose to sort of dive in at the point with which you feel is most appropriate. So we do a combination of deep linking at times for different portions of the sales experience, and as well leverage the more full TNU experience at certain times. And again, that's completely your choice. You have the flexibility to manage that user experience however you might like. I would say as well that the look and feel of the system can be tailored. They refer to this sort of header and footer section as the template that you run with TNU, and you work with them to make that look exactly as it does with your main website. And so I think it was Rebecca that had shown an example of the flow from the main sort of organization webpage into TNU to the end user, apart from the fact that the address and the URL has changed. The look and feel of the site is consistent, so that everyone really trusts the experience. Because I think security when you're talking about online transactions and the perception of your public that things are safe and secure is really important. And the look and feel of the experience, I think, is a big piece of that. So it's really quite a flexible platform. I would say as well, speaking to some of the challenges that we had previously with the different systems, one of the things that's been really a big step forward for us with Tessitura is our ability to ensure that the data that we have in Tessitura, in that database, is actually good data. That we're constantly making sure that if a user is confused, perhaps they like one of our patrons, they forgot their login and password maybe and created another account when they were trying to buy a ticket. There's a process to merge accounts, as an example. There's a process to deduplicate your database to make sure that if Stephen Sherwood is buying a ticket and I'd forgotten I already had an account, well, there's a method to merge up that information and make sure that all of my history will actually eventually make it into that one account. Similarly, even for basic things like street address, postal code, phone numbers, I mean, you get to choose when you're setting up the system what your data standard is. If you want always to show brackets around the area code for a phone number, as an example, you can enforce that around the system so that when you're pulling data out, it's going to be consistent. If you're sending phone numbers for a colleague to make use of, or if you make use of services of a third party to make phone calls for your organization, it'll be consistent information that you're sending to that third party. We actually use a third-party service called Experian Data Quality that is both a back office facing technology and something that is available on the website experience as well. So when someone's building an account, you've probably encountered this on different websites where you put in your postal address and you get a little pop-up message that says, either did you mean to enter the address like this, or is this address actually, this is the suggested version of the address that we would like. We put the power still into the hands of the patron, like their choice of presenting their address in a particular way can't be, 100% overridden, but it gives the person the opportunity to put the address in using Canada Post standard information. So that's a really useful tool. And as well, even when your staff are entering information in through the back office tool, they're presented with the same sort of prompt. So if they've left out the space between the first 3 and the last 3 characters of a postal code, it'll correct that for them. Things like that.
That's great. For those that are not on Tessitura, think of it, self-hosting is just not a good idea. And to be entirely honest, the only reason we self-host is because the amount of customization that we have put into it, it would take a lot for us to de-customize the solution to be able to move over to RAMP. That being said, our goal long-term is to actually do that. The issues that we were having was that the API wasn't fully functional and fully realized yet. So by version 16, they intend to have the full set of API tools in place to allow for better customization. And at that point, anything else that we have that's internal, we fully intend to move external to the system and use the API in order to have those customizations. That way we can essentially homogenize the implementation that we have of Tessitura. Because one of the difficulties that we have is that when updates occur, sometimes it can break the customizations because we've taken it pretty far. So the intent is to get rid of all of that and then just use the API and build outside of the system. Once we're able to do that, then we can move to a RAMP implementation, because it is, even for the ballet, it's an expensive proposition. and we're repeating work that we don't need to be doing. So being able to implement their hosted solution and then just focus on your core competency and focus on sales and your business, and not have to then become an IT hosting company, is something that I highly suggest.
I would just say, I would echo what Chris said, and maybe just to instill some more confidence in you all. The Canadian Opera Company joined Tessitura several years after the ballet did, and part of the reason we waited so long as an organization is that we had been listening to what our peer organizations had been experiencing somewhat, and we wanted to wait until we perceived the solution was mature enough to not require us to make a ton of customizations to make it work the way it did. So unlike the ballet, we have very few customizations. So as a result, when updates come through, it's a fairly seamless process. Tessitura has actually moved to a much more iterative approach to applying updates. And so we still have an internal checklist of things that we look at, but really and truly it's those little small things that we've made ourselves that we want to prove out that they still work each time Tessitura rolls out an upgrade. But we're talking about a day of testing, and really it's not too arduous a thing for us. And Tessitura themselves actually suggest that 9 times out of 10 testing may not be required, because they don't anticipate anything should break. As an IT person, that the thought of applying an upgrade without testing gives me hives. So I do the testing, but it may not be necessary. That's my own neuroses, I suppose. Anyway, I just wanted to say as well, I think Tessitura themselves would suggest that for most organizations, unless you're extremely large in size, they really suggest these days that you go with their hosted solution. They see a really diminishing, path of return, for doing it yourself. Again, unless you are such a large organization, have so many constituents in your database, that kind of thing, that you require the performance that a cloud-based solution might not deliver. Certainly for our database, we've had no issues from a performance standpoint.
Most of the self-hosted now are consortiums or are companies that have such high capacity that the ramp solution, it doesn't make sense to be on ramp because they can't facilitate that type of traffic. Otherwise, so Kennedy Centers and Lincoln Centers and Pittsburgh Cultural Trust and Philly, these consortiums, they have to self-host just because of the capacity issues. But for regular organizations, it's not, that self-hosting is not necessary. Alex, you're going to say something?
Yes, I was just going to maybe circle back on a question that I asked the folks from Tessitura, and maybe if the two of you can kind of give each of your perspectives. For the smaller organization, and even Andrew mentioned that typically Tessitura works with organizations that are $2 million and up. But for those $2 million and less, based on your experiences, how do you think a smaller organization would best approach CRM?
Well, from the Tessitura perspective, it might make sense to do as Andrew had sort of suggested, to form a consortium of other like-minded institutions and then go in together. Each organization will become a sub-licensee in effect, but maintain all of the same functionality. Your data would be logically separated in such a way so that it's still only your organization that would be able to see that information. So your partner or fellow consortium members would not have access to your data, but you're sharing a resource effectively. that's certainly one option. Should be said as well that as you know, as much as we love Tessitura, Tessitura is not the only option out there, and there may be other options worth exploring that might be a better fit. But I would suggest that as a general guiding principle, just trying to recognize that if you're wanting to truly take your decision making and base it on actual things that are happening, or another way of putting that is maybe to call it data-driven decision making, that you have to make sure that the data you're keeping, whether it's in a spreadsheet or a database like Tessitura, that it's consistent and correct. And so, I think really just developing within your own organization standard operating procedures and good documentation around how you collect and then store that information is key.
Chris?
The difficulty with CRMs is that Tessitura is built for purpose, and it's specifically geared towards performing arts. There are a lot of CRM applications out there, but then you start getting into the same issue of customization and building it to fit your specific needs. A lot of people talk about Salesforce, and Salesforce is a big one, but what you don't realize, or what a lot of people don't realize, is that under the hood, Salesforce is actually a very expensive proposition because it requires a lot of customization. And then, depending, you could do something as simple as Gmail's Streak, which integrates, it's a customer resource management tool and pipeline tool that integrates directly with Gmail. It's completely free, or you can get it for only a couple of dollars. But then it requires you to actually customize it, build it, manage it, maintain it, clean the data, and that becomes a lot of work. So it really comes down to the resources that you have available and the level of comfort that you have with the system, and then how much are you willing to invest in making it fit your needs. And so sometimes, I think that's why the idea of a consortium and working with a group of individuals on an implementation of Tessitura makes a lot of sense. The other intangible that you don't get when you just go with any common CRM is that you have the Tessitura community, and you have the learning workshops, and you have the resources and the shared knowledge. And that actually, I think, is of greater appeal to our organizations, the ability to be able to meet on a regular basis with organizations that are like you and actually share best practices and problem solving and understanding how other organizations and institutions have dealt with the issues. And that Tessitura community that they've fostered is probably the one thing that they didn't talk enough about, which I think makes all the difference in the world in terms of being able to run your business, because there's access to the tools, but then access to that larger pool of knowledge in that community that really helps you understand and leverage it and lean on when you need it is something that I think is also really quite interesting. So there's other values to the Tessitura tool outside of that that you may not get by going with another third party. It's really up to what your capacity is too.
Yeah, we actually, just to call out a few different things, there's an annual conference that happens. The location is always different. It has been in Canada before, but it's typically somewhere in the United States. And they run a separate conference in the different regions. So there's a European and an Asian conference as well, held every year. And as well, there's online and local resources as well. So our local group is called SOTUG, Southern Ontario Tessitura Users Group. And there's an online community that's part of the Tessitura Network website. But as well, when we were still able to gather in person, we would have, you know, a couple of meetups annually, typically, with, you know, different topics and presenters. And, you know, it was a great opportunity to network with your colleagues and your peers, but as well just to learn and to share what was new and different approaches you may be taking.
Okay, great. We don't have any questions in the chat, so I guess Steve and Chris, thanks for that, and we'll move on to the last presentation of the day, which is actually by me. So let me just put up presentation here. 1 second. So today might have been a lot for you to digest. You may have felt like you were drinking from a fire hose as opposed to drinking from a tap. And so what I'm going to try and do in the next 15 or 20 minutes is really just boil everything that you've heard down to bite-sized chunks that make sense for the smaller, medium-sized organizations. So we've heard a lot about customer relationship management solutions today, but they really are the software solution. Software solutions obviously can be helpful. They can also be very daunting. And not every software solution will fit every organization, but a CRM solution does focus your efforts in a few key areas. The first is for you to understand who your customers or who your audiences are. We'll talk more about that in a second. The second is to help you understand what are their preferences. Third is how and when do they interact with you? And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, how can you begin to better serve them? And so who is your customer? Now, pretty much everybody on the call is doing this to some extent today. Understand or knowing what your customer is, something as simple as what is their name? Where do they live? What is their contact info? Or do you capture their email address? Do you capture any kind of social media activity about your customers? What is your relationship with that organization? What is their relationship with your organization? Are they a customer? Are they a partner, a donor, a sponsor, a volunteer? All these different types of people that your organization works with. Do you understand who each one of these people are and what their relationship is with your organization? How often do they contact your organization? So for example, if somebody often has issues with tickets, often has queries about upcoming performances, are you tracking how often somebody interacts with you? And then how are you managing those touch points? Do you have a clear understanding with somebody that may be struggling to interact with your company, may have had issues in the past and you're trying to hold on to them as a valuable customer? Do you have a clear visibility into each one of those touch points with a specific customer? Next, what are your customers' preferences? Do you understand the types of performance that they go to? Are there certain genres that a specific customer may be more interested in that may affect how you market to them? Are there specific artists that your customers like to interact with, and are you marketing to them based on that? Are there specific venues? If your organization works in multiple venues, are those venues more appealing to certain types of customers? So the whole universe of preferences that orbit around a customer. How and when do they interact with you? So when have they bought tickets? How much do they spend on tickets? Are they a season ticket holder? Do they typically buy them in the fall, in the spring, etc.? Have there ever been any kind of issues that have needed support? So for example, if somebody may have had any kind of customer support issue, they didn't like a performance, they didn't like their seats, they thought that there was somebody noisy and it affected their enjoyment of the performance. All those kinds of things are important for you to understand that when you're actually dealing with a customer. Are they a potential candidate to become a donor? We know that our organizations like to manage customers through, and as we start to get a better sense as to who a customer may be, we may want to reach out to them to become a donor, to become a volunteer, to become an ambassador of the organization. Do you have a good understanding of who those people are, and how are you tracking and identifying those people within your ecosystem? And finally, how can you better serve them? So are there ways for you to market to them for new performances. Once you understand who your customer is and what their preferences are, you can start to tailor your organization's presentation to them. Are there ways to make better customer service? I think we've all had experiences on our own dealing with organizations where we as people may not have had the best customer service. What is it that your organization is doing to enhance that customer experience or the customer service experience with your audiences? And then finally, cross-pollination across companies. So we heard today about the potential opportunities around collaboration around CRM. Once you start to bring multiple organizations' customer lists together, you're going to get greater visibility into who exactly that customer is. And then are there ways to cross-market across organizations? All of this information can be used to not only improve the decision-making around how an organization manages a customer, but it can begin to affect how your organization manages its own decision-making. And so are you using that information to enable better decision-making in your organization? Things like CRM are not IT solutions. They're not marketing. They're not only ticketing. Entire organizations, if they have visibility into the information that a CRM holds, entire organizations can benefit from it. And I'll give you an example. I used to work with the Toronto Public Library. And the Toronto Public Library had, I would describe, limited visibility into everything we've talked about so far. But we started to build out these capabilities in small steps. And so, as you can imagine, as a government organization, there's always budget pressures, et cetera. The City of Toronto always wants to find new and better ways for all of its organizations, including the library, to manage their budgets. And so the Toronto Public Library had a good sense as to when their libraries were busy and when they were not. And they shared this information, or we shared this information with the city, and the city came back and said, well, we believe that you can save some money by closing your branches on Friday nights, because Friday nights are the least busy time of the week for your branches. And so we kind of said, scratched our head and said, okay, that's interesting. Let us do some digging into this. And using the data that was at your library's disposal, using some of these principles around CRM and business intelligence, et cetera, the library was able to find that, yes, Friday nights were the least busy time of week in its branches. But Friday nights were also the most busy time for boys aged 9 to 14 in its branches. So we kind of posed that back to the city to say, okay, City of Toronto, we could close, but what's going to happen with all these boys that are 9 to 14? They're no longer going to be in a library. They're going to be at the mall, at a park, on the street, etc. And you may start to see other issues start to bubble up with this giant cohort of potentially, in some cases, vulnerable citizens of the city. And so armed with that information, the library was able to effectively fend off the closure of libraries on Friday nights. So the information that you're gathering in CRM today may be incredibly valuable for a question that you have not even been asked yet. And so really using that information to enable better decision-making in your organization is absolutely a critical outcome of how you can use CRM and the information that you're gathering to make decisions around who you should market to, what performances might do better than others, and how do you reach new audiences along with the general day-to-day, I'll call it non-sexy type of reporting that all of us do. And so finally, as I mentioned, CRM technology solutions can be large, they can be scary, they can be incredibly expensive. There are things out there that are cheaper, but many small organizations use things like Excel, Access, or other fairly inexpensive solutions on a regular basis, and that's okay. The question really becomes, how much are you investing, not only from a dollars perspective, but from a people perspective, to make sure that you're managing your solutions as best as you can so that you're getting the business benefit. You are doing CRM today, and the question becomes, how well am I doing it, and am I using it as a strategic pillar of your organization? Because it's the customers, it's the audiences, it's the patrons that are really at the core of what everybody online here does on a day-to-day basis. And how well you know each one of those people really will affect the bottom line of your organization. And so when you think about how you're doing it, ask yourself the questions that I kind of went through in the last 15 minutes as to, do you know who your customers are? How are you interacting with them? Are you serving your customers in the best way possible? And if the answer is yes, great. In many cases, the answer will be, we could probably do a little bit better. And if that is the answer to it, it may involve technology, it may not. And so really doing a deeper dive exploration into those kinds of questions can really begin to guide your organization down the right path to really get the business benefits of using a potential CRM solution. So that's all I have to say about that. If there are any questions out there, feel free to pose them in the chat. Otherwise, I think I'll hand it back to Amy to wrap up this 4 session of working with digital and large arts and culture organizations.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to Victoria and the folks at SAPAMO for providing us this opportunity to partner with you to talk a little bit about how we're using digital technologies at our companies, how we see the future of digital technology going, and of course, how we can begin to deepen our engagement with other organizations and smaller arts peers. It's been a really, really worthwhile session for us. We're looking forward to building on the relationship that we've established in the last little while. And then, as always, if anybody has questions, wants to build on what we've been talking about here in the last 4 weeks, please feel free to get in touch with anybody at the COC, starting with me or Stephen on more specific technology questions, and to Chris at the National Ballet of Canada. We are here to be partners in the success of the sector and to work together to see the entire sector ready for the digital future that's coming after COVID. So thank you very much. It's been great, and we hope to see some of you in the future.